All right, everyone. Welcome to Waking the Kraken. I'm Wes Potts.
And I'm Alex Kahneman.
And welcome back to our Captain's Log
Number 3.
Yeah, it's
Number
3. And this week we're coming at you with our favorite films.
Favorite films this time.
So, yeah.
I've had a lot of... I was really excited for this one because this is something that, like, I feel like it's talked about a lot, but, like, I don't really get to always say, like, these are, like, my top 3 films. Like, this is what I would say everyone should watch.
I think the thing that was hard, it was hard for me. Like,
Yeah.
I love movies and stuff.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think the thing that was hard for me was picking 3 top favorites and an honorable mention.
Yeah, I know, right? It was tough.
So,
It was tough.
but I did it.
I was able to narrow mine down. I feel like I have good reasons for why I picked them too. And
Yeah.
I think that's what made it, most importantly, the easiest.
I just picked various genres.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
That's fair. Well, all right. Well, let's get into it. Let's do it.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start, man.
Yeah.
I'll start.
I've got props.
We got props.
So,
All right. So for my first film, these are in no particular order. These are just top 3. They're all the top. The Shawshank Redemption.
why is the Shawshank Redemption?
It was the first live-action film that I watched and was like, whoa!
Gotcha.
It fucking blew my mind as a child.
Yeah.
And it like made me interested in things that weren't cartoons for the first time ever.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Shawshank Prison's actually in Castle Rock.
Yeah, I know.
So-
I've been thinking about it a lot lately because of that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It also kind of nailed in like my love for Morgan Freeman,
Right.
and so like he's been present as an actor that I think about since I was like 7 now.
Yeah.
Which is like now almost 19 years.
Yeah, 19 years of,
Yeah.
of loving Morgan
Of
Freeman.
loving Morgan Freeman, dude. And it was also the first time I had seen Tim Robbins in a movie.
Yeah.
And like that's been kind of weird because that's such a serious role, and like he is in so many different weird roles that are like nothing like him being just an everyday dude.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
Yeah, like in Tenacious D, and he's the homeless dude in the parking lot.
Yeah.
That still freaks me out when I see that. I'm just like, wait, he for Andy Dufresne? I thought he went to Mexico.
No.
No. What's your number 1 film, Wes?
My first
Or your first film, rather.
is going to be the classic John Carpenter film, Escape from New York.
Escape from New York.
Escape from New Yorko. It's done by John Carpenter, who also did They Live. He did People Under the Stairs. But the thing that I love about this is it takes place in the futuristic year of 1997, where Manhattan Island has become a penal colony for the most criminally insane. And the president is flying back from a summit between the Soviets, because they were still around in 97,
Right.
and the Chinese. But it stars Kurt Russell in it, who, if you know me personally, you know that all I do is talk about Kurt Russell. My character in Bad Form is modeled off of Snake Plissken, who is who Kurt Russell plays.
That's awesome.
Sans the one eye.
Well, right.
Yet.
Yet.
I might lose an eye sometime.
You never know.
Jinx. Damn it. But yeah, so Escape from New York was one of those movies. It's not necessarily a beautifully shot movie and or a really good movie at all. It is just really, really fun to watch, and it's really, really fun to watch with your friends when you just want to sit and watch an action film that's just action for action and is ridiculous.
You know, there's a lot of people like to throw around the term camp,
Sure.
and I feel like it's been misused in so many ways, like or not misused rather, but it's been used in so many different ways that like camp to me now can pretty much just be anything that is like kind of like fantastically like silly or like obviously fake that is still played through as if it were seriously real.
Yeah.
And so like action movies can be really freaking campy, and like I think campiness done really well makes the movie bad, quote unquote.
Sure.
But it also is like still like a really good, well done film, and everything about it is still awesome. It's just they're playing campiness like almost on purpose.
Also, Escape from New York was not filmed in New York. It was actually filmed. You said your grandparents were from St. Louis.
Yes.
It was filmed in St. Louis.
That's not a surprise at
So
all.
it's awesome. Like, because I've been to St. Louis before and stuff, I remember seeing these places.
Yeah.
And it did look like a horrible ghost town at the places that I went. But Escape from New York, go check it out. It's amazing.
So for my number 2, I've got Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Yeah. For those of you who have never
Which one?
No, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Not Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Willy Wonka. Gene Wilder.
Right. That's the one I hoped you would have said.
Yeah. So, like, I have this movie on Blu-ray, and I've always made sure to own it, like, pretty much my whole life of, like, trying to own things.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, something about this movie, it kind of has the same sort of, like, kind of, like, awe and wonder of, like, The Wizard of Oz to me.
Okay, yeah.
But it's less about, like, someone trying to get home, and it's more about, like, understanding, like, what's worth valuing in a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only reason Charlie wins the whole competition is because he decided, even though he wasn't going to get the chocolate at the end, he gave the gobstopper back to Willy Wonka because Willy Wonka had told him it was a secret and he shouldn't tell anybody about it until he was ready. And in doing that, he had done the last thing that Willy Wonka needed him to do for him to win. And what makes it such a good movie to me is that it takes the time to, like, show you that, like, what Willy Wonka cares about, and the reason he seems crazy is because he actually values people who are, like, good people, and that's what he was looking for.
Right.
He needed the innocence of a child who still, would be like, you know what, like, this isn't my place to do. So
have you heard the perpetual debate about how Charlie's grandparents are terrible people because his grandpa just jumps out of bed and, like, can, like, sprint around and jump and, like, dance. Yeah. And they're like, why are you bedridden then? Like,
okay, if you've seen the movie, he gets up because he got a freaking golden ticket.
Yeah,
Duh.
But the other thing is they sit there every day and they think they're feeble people that can't do anything and they're bedridden all day. And then, like, the next thing you know, he's like, oh, we're going to this thing. Let's jump up and dance.
Let's do it, right? Yeah. That is true. And also, like, little understated, I think, the song Cheer Up Charlie is probably one of, like, the saddest songs in the context of film ever written.
Well, the rowboat scene alone is, like, terrifying.
Oh, well, yeah, that is very terrifying. I don't know. That whole movie is just something to really behold to me.
Yeah.
And plus, it was all done for something like less than $5,000.
Yeah.
Like, incredible to me.
Going on Wonder.
Yes.
My next movie is none other than Jurassic Park.
I
saw this when I was 5 years old, and I was astonished. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. For a weird horror film to show your children, I mean, obviously, like, dinosaurs is what every kid's obsessed with, but it's horrific to see, like, the dinosaur eat the lawyer and stuff.
Well,
but,
yeah.
I loved it. Like, I became obsessed with I could name every dinosaur. I had an ABC book of dinosaurs. And not just that, but it also solidified my love for Jeff Goldblum and, what's his name? Dr. Grant.
Yeah. What is his name?
Sam Neill.
Sam Neill, that's right.
it. I had to take a moment. But Sam Neill. And Sam Neill did a bunch of other things. I still watch things with Sam Neill just because he was in Jurassic Park.
That's true.
I did love the Merlin movie, or, like, the Merlin made-for-TV movie. But Sam Neill was in Jurassic Park first, and I adored it. You know, David Attenborough's brother's in it, and everything. Yeah, he plays Dr. Hammonds.
Right.
And it's just astonishing. And nothing has ever been, like, none of the sequels have ever been able to compete with Jurassic Park.
I would agree with that.
But it's so, like, it's the one movie I know that I have in my repertoire that if anyone goes, hey, we're going to watch a movie, do you want to watch Jurassic Park? There's no time that I could have watched it literally right before I came over that I'd be like, let's watch Jurassic Park. It's a movie that I can watch anytime, always.
I totally agree with that.
So,
it is a really well-made movie, and, like, all of the, like, effects, the special effects that they've done, all pretty much still really hold up. The
lighting's beautiful. Like, it's like, even where, like, the Tyrannosaurus eye, like, is, like, it looks beautiful. Yeah,
it's really well done, and plus, like, they really did a good job of playing on kind of, like, the psychology of, like, what it would have been like to be in a world where there were other predators, where we weren't, like, the apex predator.
Yeah.
Which is really fun to me, which was what makes it scary, you know?
Yeah, no, it was wonderful.
That was also one of my favorite books when I was, like, it was one of my first adult books that I had started to read.
I didn't read it until I was probably in middle school.
Yeah, it made me fall in love with Michael Crichton.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Congo was really, I read Congo before I read Jurassic Park, I think.
And I will also arguably say that the book Jurassic Park, was the reason that I got into, like, kind of, like, like heady, like mathematical sort of like thought.
Yeah.
Because it talks about chaos theory like so much throughout that book.
That's
and I
all
had never
Goldblum
been
talks
introduced to something like that.
Dr.
So,
Malcolm.
Dr.
Chaos
Malcolm,
theory.
dude. Yeah. So for my third movie, I think this is the most important movie on my list. That's why I made it 3.
Gotcha.
So like I would say that that's all it is. It's the most important movie on my list that everyone else should see. It's The Time Machine, based off the H.G. Wells book. It came out in 1960. I made you watch this when we lived together.
We watched this together.
Yeah. This is easily the best time machine movie ever made. And if you want to argue with me, you're wrong. And this is because it's scientifically not that important what happens in it. It's
Right.
not the idea is he's traveling through time, but that's not what's cool about it. What's cool about it is it's like a journey through the psychological response of a human who is stuck in a singular experience of time.
Yeah.
And what would happen to your mind if you were to move forward through the future or back into the past.
Yeah.
And what's crazy about it to me is like it's set in like the turn of the century, like 1899 to like 900s, and the scientist makes it, and he goes like into like seeing the nuclear fallout testing in different countries, trying to figure out what that is during the world wars. Then he goes even further beyond that, and like nuclear war is even more so of a problem, which they're trying to get into the future of what was of the film at that point, in the 1960s.
Yeah.
They're going beyond that, and then he even goes like, you would think, oh yeah, like he'll just go a few more 100 years in the future maybe, but then he just freaking goes for it and goes something like 18,000 years into the future. And like there's like this whole other culture of like animal beings, or like human kind of hominid beings.
Humanoids, yeah.
Yeah, humanoids. And all of them together now are like descendants of what the ancient human race was, and he's having to learn why humans have become this thing.
Yeah.
Or rather, he sees them and has to learn that they are the descendants of humans.
Yeah.
And it just kind of talks about the terrors of what time travel could actually be and what you might actually find. And man, is it fantastic, dude. It also goes from the freaking point of view, instead of like being like, oh, here's a place where like this guy did time travel and like here's all the things he did away from there. It's like, no, you're going to ride with the dude in the machine and watch the world change from the perspective of the time traveler.
Right.
Which no other film really does either, which is completely blew my mind.
It's funny that I mentioned Jurassic Park and you said that was one of the first books you read that was an adult style. That was one of the first books. Like the Time Machine by H.G. Wells was one of the first. I read War of the Worlds, which is one of my favorite books. And was my favorite book for a long time. But I then swiftly read The Time Machine and then The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I love the story of The Time Machine is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just really funny that you brought up that I had watched Jurassic Park and then you said that was
crazy.
it, and mine is H.G. Wells' Time Machine.
Yeah, and I've actually never read that book, The Time Machine
It's
book.
good. I've got it. I used to have it just in a solitary form, but then for some reason my books got messed up somewhere or something, and I just bought the H.G. Wells 7 collections.
That's the way to do it, I guess.
It was great because now I have all of them.
Well, yeah, I mean...
I never owned The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah,
Although that was funny, too, that was another movie that we watched a lot of H.G. Wells-inspired films when we lived together.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true. So what's your number 3?
My number 3 is actually a newer film. It's not new necessarily. It's 2008, I believe, but it's The Fall by Tarsem Singh.
Excellent movie.
This film is gorgeous in every aspect that I can ever think of. Like, the lighting is great, the music is great, the acting is wonderful. It's this fairy tale-esque movie that it takes place in the 1920s when Hollywood's starting up, and it's all about a little immigrant girl who works in the orange fields of California, who breaks her arm and has to go live in the hospital for a while, and a stuntman who works early on in Hollywood doing these like stunts for like cowboy western films, and he has broken his back, so he's bedridden. And so this little Romanian girl who's an immigrant, who's like a worker family, she goes and visits this guy, and in doing so, he starts telling her a story in order for her to go do errands for him.
Yeah.
And it's this elaborate story. It has all kinds of different... It's just this beautiful, beautiful fairy tale of a story that involves everything from a bandit to an explosive expert to Charles Darwin to an ex-slave who's now like a warrior. Gorgeous. Can't talk about it enough. It's from the director of The Cell, if you ever saw The Cell, which starred Jennifer Lopez. He's phenomenal in every aspect of things that I've seen. But I can't tell you the best scene in this movie that I've ever seen was he tells the story of Alexander the Great at first. That's the first story he's trying to tell her because her name is Alexandra.
Right.
And so he's telling her the story of Alexander, where her name comes from. And it's this part where they're going through the Persian desert and he's describing this vividly orange sand on this blue sky, and then it immediately cuts to a scene of a rider in what looks like old Hollywood-esque like Roman armor, riding with just a helmet full of water on a horse as fast as he can on an orange desert plain with the bluest sky in the background. Whoever was the person who scouted out all of these locations, splendid. Like you need to hire them for every movie that you ever do, or pay them large sums of money, because I can't tell you. I'm astonished by this film. 8, 9 years, 10 years later.
I mean, you made me watch. This was another film you made me watch as well, and I feel pretty much the same way about it. Where like, it's like a cinematic kind of treasure.
Yeah,
it's kind of fantastic just how many things they're able to like pull off and do so smoothly.
Yeah,
that look really like seamless and simple, and just like, oh yeah, that's a really easy idea, or like, oh, that makes sense. Like I can't believe I've never seen this done in a film before, and it all turns out it's because it's very difficult.
Yeah, it's impeccably hard to make. It was... I don't know why it got overlooked by the Oscars and everything. And Lee Pace is in it. I love Lee Pace from Pushing Daisies. He was in that. He was also in The Hobbit as one of the elves, like the Elven kings and stuff. And
right.
So, but I love watching things with Lee Pace in them too. What's your honorable mention this week?
So my honorable mention is Amadeus.
This is one that we watched together too.
Yes.
And we watched all these movies together.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. Amadeus, I watched whenever I was in probably like early middle high school, and it was the first film that I felt like really captured like how excuse me. Really captured like the way I felt about music and like the way that characters talked about it.
Yeah.
And like, because I don't know, I was kind of a weirdo, I guess, or I was the stereotypical music guy, where it was like all I lived and breathed it and just talked about it, like tried to wax poetic about it all the time. And so seeing this movie where it kind of introduces like opera and classical music, and reintroduces it rather to kind of the popular secular entertainment. Whenever that movie came out, it just kind of really blows me away. Like, it does it in such a way that still feels profound and poignant and is really worth watching. And it's actually super entertaining. And the only reason I didn't end up picking it to be on my list, though, is because it's all made up.
Right, yeah. It's not necessarily accurate to the...
Yeah, for those of you who have seen it, Salieri and Mozart, there's no evidence they ever even met each other.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, their contemporaries didn't even meet each other. It's kind of strange. It's got very
good quotes in it, though.
It does have some really good quotes in it. In fact, one of my favorite bands, Children of Bodom, likes to use a bunch of little snippets from it.
Yeah.
To start and end songs.
And it's also got. I will say, in defense of Amadeus, it is very for having the theme of classical music. It's incredibly punk rock.
Oh, I would imagine. So is, dude. It so is.
It's got this weird rebellious nature to it, and paints this weird air of anger towards each other, and it's weird. It's great,
dude. It's a really important statement that you just said, because it goes to show you that the only way music gets created and changes is if everyone just says, oh yeah, this is good, let's just make music like this.
Yeah,
you have to have people who say, but what if we did it this way? And everyone goes, we can't do it that way. That's the history of music, in a nutshell. Every conflict with music from generation to generation is just that. Yeah. People going, that's blasphemy, and other people going, but we're trying something different.
Yeah. My honorable mention is obviously spooky. It's The Exorcist.
Oh yeah, dude.
This is my favorite horror film. I love it. I think it's by William Friedkin. William something, begins with an F. He directed this. This is wonderful. I actually got to, when I went down to Halloween Horror Nights a couple years ago, they actually had a maze that was Exorcist themed, where you got to go through the entire house.
Rad.
It has, the typical Father Merrin. It was the scariest film for forever, according to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Beautiful cinematography. The stories behind the actual film also is absurd and terrifying.
Yeah.
But outside of that, like, Linda Blair does a wonderful job at playing a terrifying child.
Yeah, that's for sure, dude.
Yeah. And my girlfriend loves to show me everything ever about Exorcist when I told her that my favorite horror film was The Exorcist. And there's just something creepy about it. Like, there's something about, in my opinion, when it comes down to horror films, demonic films are always the ones that mess with me the most.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the fact that I'm a horribly religious person. I think it's the fact that, like, the lack of control and not knowing that you're not in control, and something that, like, is invisible that can control everything about you and you have no power over it, is literally the most terrifying thing. So this little girl, Reagan, in the film, who is controlled by this horrible, monstrous demon Pazuzu, who's the Lord of Pestilence in, like, I think it's Mesopotamian mythology.
Yeah.
He's got her body, and he's just doing all these horrible things, and she's saying wretched things to the priest, to her mom, everything, and she has no idea what's going on. It's this weird story of, like, kind of like what happens when you go through puberty. You have no idea what's going on. Things are just happening to you,
right?
And your emotions are here, there, and everywhere. And sometimes you say things that don't even seem like they're in your character. But that's presented in the fact that instead of her just having a natural thing, it's her body is possessed by the spawn of Satan.
Right. Right. That's cool. I've never actually thought about that before.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And for those of you who care about this movie, like, I also think it's important to say, if you watch this, you also should skip the second one and watch the third one, because the third one is the true sequel to this one and actually, like, makes sense along with it.
And if you're really, really into it like I am, there's The Exorcist, the beginning, which is the story of Father Merrin. However, I would say they made two versions of the beginning. There's The Exorcist, the beginning, which was the official Hollywood release. Both of them star, Stefan Skarsgård as Father Merrin. But the first one that was originally made was by this director, I believe, and it was Dominion. Dominion, I find, was so much better because it was by the original writer of The Exorcist. Like, the script was written by the original writer, and then it went through a lot of hell getting made, and so then they just scrapped it and made The Exorcist 2. I mean, The Exorcist, the beginning.
Interesting.
So
that's really interesting.
I do think The Heretic has its points to it, though.
Yeah.
I will argue that, The Heretic is clearly a Hollywood budget, but you do start to learn the backstory of Pazuzu and Father Merrin,
right,
which I think is very important to understanding why this battle between Reagan and Father Merrin in the first movie is so, like, wretched. Instead of just being a typical, like, I'm a demon, you're a priest, we're gonna fight, this goes back to this, like, blood vendetta between Pazuzu and Father Merrin.
Right.
So
it's like, yeah, they actually have the history. It's not just like your everyday, like, encounter.
Yeah.
It's what makes it so cool. Anyways, that's good movies, dude.
Yeah, I think those were great choices and stuff.
Well, I mean, we're a little biased to each other.
Sure,
yeah.
Tell us what you think.
Yeah, what do you guys think?
That our opinions
do you
are
think
great?
we picked anything good?
So,
what would you have picked instead? Who knows?
As always, I'm Wes Potts.
And I'm Alex Kahneman.
Have a good one.
Peace.
Okay, goodbye.
Peace.